You've probably been trapped in this familiar loop before. One evening, filled with determination, you sit down and write out a plan to change your life starting tomorrow. You tell yourself you'll wake up earlier, exercise consistently, study more seriously, read a few pages every day, and finally cut down on the endless phone scrolling. In that moment, everything feels possible. You feel clear, motivated, almost proud of the person you're about to become. But then tomorrow actually arrives. The alarm goes off, and instead of jumping out of bed, you silence it and drift back to sleep. You pick up your phone, telling yourself you'll just check it for a few minutes, and somehow an entire hour disappears. You glance at your desk or your to-do list, feel a wave of heaviness, and eventually sigh to yourself. The conclusion feels obvious and familiar. I guess I just don't have discipline. But here's a truth that very few people ever realize. You don't actually lack discipline. What you lack is a correct understanding of what discipline really is, and because of that misunderstanding, you've been applying it in a way that guarantees failure from the very first step. Most people think discipline means forcing yourself to resist temptation, clenching your teeth, and being stronger every single day than you were yesterday. They believe discipline is about willpower, emotional intensity, or short bursts of motivation. They assume that if they just cared more, tried harder, or pushed themselves enough, everything would finally fall into place. But discipline doesn't work that way. True discipline isn't built on emotions or temporary enthusiasm. It isn't about fighting yourself every day. Discipline is about understanding how the brain actually works and designing your environment so that the right actions become the easiest actions. When you truly understand this, discipline stops feeling like something rare or heroic. It becomes something practical, almost boring but incredibly powerful. Just a small system, applied correctly, can quietly transform your habits and, over time, your entire life. To build discipline, you first have to understand the real reason you struggle to maintain it. The human brain is wired to choose what feels easy. This isn't a character flaw, it's a survival instinct. For most of human history, conserving energy meant staying alive. So when your brain faces a task that requires effort, studying, exercising, focusing deeply, or doing meaningful work, it automatically creates a feeling of heaviness, resistance, and delay. That feeling is what we experience as procrastination. It's not because you're weak or lazy. It's because your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do: save energy. Now add modern technology to this equation. Your phone, social media, and endless streams of entertainment are carefully engineered to deliver dopamine instantly. One tap, one swipe, and you get a reward right away. Novelty, stimulation, validation, distraction. Meanwhile, activities like learning, reading, training, or building something meaningful offer rewards that arrive slowly, sometimes weeks or months later. The dopamine gap is massive. So when your brain is forced to choose between something that feels good now and something that might feel good later, it almost always chooses the immediate reward. That's why you find yourself reaching for your phone without thinking. That's why it's so easy to quit before you even begin. And that's why, if you struggle with focus and consistency, it's not a personal failure, it's simply your brain responding to the environment it's in. The good news is that this also means you can change your behavior far more gently than you think. You don't need to fight your brain. You need to work with it. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in building discipline: the activation threshold. The hardest part of any habit isn't doing the thing, it's starting. You don't actually hate running, you hate tying your shoes and stepping out the door. You don't dislike studying, you dislike opening the book. You don't refuse to clean your room, you resist standing up and taking the very first action. Once you get past that initial moment, everything tends to flow more smoothly. Many people say they feel incredibly lazy before exercising, but once they're already moving, they feel energized and engaged. The resistance exists almost entirely before the action begins, not during the action itself. That resistance is the activation threshold. And if that threshold is too high, procrastination becomes inevitable. But if you lower the threshold enough that your brain can't find a convincing excuse to avoid it, starting becomes almost automatic. This is where discipline stops being about force and starts becoming about design. There is a simple 3-step system that allows you to build discipline naturally, without exhaustion, without relying on motivation, and without constantly feeling like you're battling yourself. When this system is applied correctly, good actions begin to happen almost on their own. The first step is reducing friction. The more complicated the first step of a task is, the less likely you are to begin. If every time you want to exercise, you have to search for your clothes, find your shoes, and prepare everything from scratch, your brain will quietly resist. If every time you want to study, your desk is cluttered and your materials are scattered, the task already feels overwhelming before you even start. Reducing friction means shaping your environment so that the first step is as easy as possible. Lay out your workout clothes where you can see them. Prepare your study materials the night before. Keep your workspace clean and simple. Turn off phone notifications before opening your laptop to work. When everything is already prepared, your brain has far fewer excuses to delay. You're no longer asking yourself to make a difficult choice, you're simply stepping into what's already set up. The second step is starting with 2 minutes. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to build discipline is setting goals that are too large. Study for 2 hours. Read an entire chapter. Work out for an hour. Clean the whole room. These goals sound productive, but they raise the activation threshold too high. What you actually need isn't to finish the task. You just need to start. 2 minutes is enough. Not 2 hours, 2 minutes. Open the book and read a few lines. Do a single exercise movement. Fold one piece of clothing. Sit down and write one sentence. 2 minutes is small enough that your brain can't convincingly argue against it. And once you've crossed the starting line, something interesting happens. Momentum kicks in. Most people naturally continue far longer than they planned, without feeling pressured or drained. The power of discipline doesn't come from how long you force yourself to work. It comes from how consistently you begin. The third step is creating a reward loop. Discipline cannot survive on responsibility alone. The brain needs dopamine to repeat behavior. So, when you complete a task, no matter how small, you need to attach a reward to it. The reward doesn't have to be big. It can be a short break, a favorite song, a glass of cold water, a stretch, or even the simple satisfaction of checking something off a list. What matters is that your brain starts associating the right action with a pleasant feeling. When the brain connects effort with reward, it begins to crave repetition. The action no longer feels like suffering. It becomes something you naturally return to. Over time, this creates a self-reinforcing loop. You act, you feel good, and because you feel good, you want to act again. Discipline stops being about endurance and starts feeling like flow. When these 3 steps work together, something becomes very clear. Discipline isn't about fighting yourself. It's about designing your life so that doing the right thing becomes the easiest option available. When you understand this mechanism, discipline stops feeling distant or intimidating. You don't need massive motivation. You don't need iron willpower. You don't need to transform your personality. You just need to start correctly. Reduce friction. Start with 2 minutes. Attach a reward to the behavior you want to repeat. If you stay consistent with these 3 principles, discipline stops being a struggle. It becomes a habit, and habits, quietly and steadily, lead you toward a better life without forcing you to suffer along the way.